Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Sabian Symbols meeting. I hope you are all well and that you had a chance to study or at least have a look at your Ascendant Sabian symbol. So the Ascendant is our focus of today. The Ascendant is about our personality, the way we show ourselves in the world. How is it that others perceive us? Maybe an interesting question to reflect upon. I would like to invite James to give us a more detailed outlook on how can we approach the Ascendant. James?
Yes, the Ascendant is the personality in the sense that it's the interface between the essence of who we are, the inner being of who we are, all the nuances of I-ness, and what we choose to present to the world. It's like a colored glass, in a sense, through which we look at the world. So the colored glass that you look through is your Ascendant. And equally, the world looks at you through that same color. So you are seen to be rather like your Ascendant, and you see the world rather like your Ascendant. First, at the first glance, shall we say, it's the first thing. The Ascendant is that which is ascending. It's the first thing. It's very precious because of that, and yet it's an axis as well. The Ascendant can't really be understood unless you simultaneously take into account the Descendant. So you have to think about the two opposing zodiac signs and Sabian degrees when you consider each of them, to consider the other. And the Descendant is that which we're not really very happy about. We're kind of in denial of that. It's the shadow. And it's also, of course, one-to-one relationships. And this is one of the wonderful secrets in astrology, where the Descendant represents both of those two principles: whom we marry and what is our deepest shadow, that which we deny. If we understand that, we understand what we're doing when we're getting involved with a one-to-one relationship, and it's not only love relationships, it's also challenges, contestants, and anyone with whom you're in a one-to-one battle. That's the Descendant. So the Ascendant is how you present yourself, even though you've got this shadow side that you don't let anybody else see. You kind of hide that from the world almost. And it's interesting to notice that the opposing signs within the zodiac are both very different from one another and more similar to each other than any of the other signs at the same time. So, like, for example, my Ascendant being Capricorn, it's a cardinal sign, it's negative, so it's introverted. And my Descendant of Cancer, a negative sign, also cardinal, also introverted. They're very, very similar in that respect. But if you think about Capricorn and Cancer, they're hugely different on the level of emotionality, for example. Cancer loving the drama of being really, really emotional and caring and loving the family and belonging and all that kind of stuff, which, of course, because it's my Descendant, I'm not very good at that. I disdain all that overblown emotionality, because I'm a Capricorn Ascendant. I like to get the job done. I've got a long-term plan measured in decades, not years, and emotions would only get in the way of that. And of course they do, because it's my shadow. The emotions come up, so that's how I kind of see the opposing Capricorn Cancer kind of mix. And each of the ascendants that we're studying today, we have to remember that you can't really understand your Ascendant unless you also take into account the Descendant. Now, the Ascendant is the initial point of the first house, and it's an angle as well. So the Ascendant deeply underlines any planet which is conjunct to the Ascendant. Many people have an angular planet which is conjunct Descendant, Ascendant, midheaven, nadir. Any planet conjunct any one of those 4 points It's an angular planet because those are the 4 angles, and therefore underlined considerably. If you've got an angular planet, it really shines in your being. And if you've got a planet on the ascendant, and when we say on the ascendant, we also include in the 12th house. So you might have a 12th house Pluto, which is nevertheless only 3 degrees away from the ascendant. You're going to come across as rather a Plutonian character, very charismatic, very magnetic. You know, you even though it's in the 12th house, because normally a 12th house planet would be less well shown, but if it's close enough to be conjunct the ascendant, then it's actually emphasized, not hidden, interestingly. So you might have a 12th house planet, which is actually accentuated because of its being an angular planet. Now, the ascendant as the beginning of the first house means that it's all about I. The first house is I am. And the first thing we have to do is exist. Before we become anything at all, we have to become. And that's the principle of the first house, and it's the principle of the ascendant. Interestingly, there's another concept of the rising planet. And if you move anti-clockwise from the ascendant, the first planet that you come across is the rising planet. Very often, of course, is in the first house, but it doesn't have to be. It might even be a second house rising planet. Very often, of course, it's the same as the ascendant, but it doesn't have to be. So sometimes you've got, let's say, for example, the ascendant is in a later degree of a sign, and then you've got a rising planet in the next zodiac sign. You would then have, for example, let's take ascendant Virgo, but your first house is predominantly, let's say, Libra, with a planet, a rising planet in Libra. So even though you've got an ascendant Virgo, you would actually be seen quite a lot like a Libran, because your rising planet, the first planet you show to the world, is Libra, and most of your first house is Libra. So when we're interpreting the ascendant, we have to take into account not only the descendant, but also any rising planets. And it is said that the ascendant very often speaks of appearance. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's something to think about. Very often a Leo ascendant person has got a very striking sense of her hair or his hair. Your mane, the lion's mane, you know. So there we see that the ascendant is a strong indicator of the appearance of the person. Whereas I, lacking horns, don't particularly look like a Capricorn.
My ascendant is in Aquarius. It's the symbol is a man tete-a-tete with his inspiration. And to speak to the symbol, I think people do kind of see me very often as someone with like a lot of ideas, and I come across as a kind of intellectual person. I know I've definitely gotten that feedback before from other people, that I strike people as, you know, basically in the realm of the mind and ideas. And I think that it's an Aquarian energy that comes forth. And I think I do like it. I like to project that. It's something I've embraced pretty readily. And I mean, it fits with even my job. I'm a researcher for a professor, and, you know, it's definitely all about ideas.
Is Scorpio 28, king of the fairies approaching his domain. And so, and Heather taught me the word self-possessed, because this is the way she spontaneously sees me. and it's, so I learned and can agree a little bit, because when I think about this king and also fairies and domain, it comes, I explained to Heather that king is me, fairies are all the birds in my head, but also all the fairies I create according to the birds outside in the world where I live. And this I call domain. Domain I borrowed from James's, which is life, it's just your life. So I'm authority in my life. I can agree, because everything, I can't go anywhere without taking myself with myself. So I feel everywhere at home, because I'm always there and trying to create something good outside. But as I told Heather, of course, I not always see these fairies out there. There are a lot of monsters, but I have this, inner willingness to change monsters into fairies. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Then I desert from the Navy if I can't. Then I desert from the situations or people, but most often I try to create the domain which is of my liking. This is how I understand. And then the thing is that my ascendant is really in the 12th house. I've got Neptune very close to the ascendant. And this is maybe how I might appear to other people, like I'm dreaming somewhere, I don't know where, but I can tell you that I'm very common sense person. And thanks God Heather had got it. So somehow, I wonder how, but yes, that yes. But the truth is that I'm quite also rational. My descendant is Taurus. I love Tauruses. Who said? James told today that that ascendants wouldn't. I don't want to be not precise, but I can only tell you that Taurus is a very good stabilizer for me, and I'm looking for security. I'm looking for the partner who would provide this security for all those strange things I want to create in this world, which is more or less spiritual and very idealistic way of living. But I need this stabilizing effect. So, here is one Taurus sitting here.
But the descendant is you, so it looks to me like you're the stabilizing.
No, my ascendant is Scorpio.
Yes, but your descendant.
Yeah, so no, I'm not.
Goodbye, Sharon. Sorry, Katrina. Sorry. So, but the descendant is you. So the sign opening the 7th house is Taurus, your Taurus.
Yes.
Yes. So the stabilizing principle in a relationship, it's you, isn't it? Am I seeing it wrong? James, am I seeing it wrong? Who knows?
What Katrina said makes a lot of sense. And what you said would be a kind of higher interpretation at a kind of higher level of consciousness.
Yeah.
You have to learn the lesson of the 7th house to embody it yourself and not project it onto your partner.
Yeah.
What Katrina's doing, she's being really honest. She's saying that
Yeah.
there are times when I'm ungrounded. It'd be great if I had a partner who pulled me down to earth, and I'll deal with like growing up later, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, at the end of the day, we are all what is there in our charts. There is no other person, it's just us. So yes. So Anna, you are right. I hope at this point in my life, I'm ready also to stabilize myself and not look just for partners to do it. Yeah.
I'm Ascendant Sagittarius 1, a Grand Army of the Republic Campfire, sharing memories. And then the Descendant would be Gemini 1, a glass-bottomed boat in still water. And I have Uranus conjunct with Sagittarius 1 in Sagittarius 3, which is men playing chess. And so I think like Sagittarius, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of about like finding the point from all the discoveries, starting to see what's important and kind of will be shared, passed forward. So maybe the discoveries, you know, that Gemini is making with the glass-bottomed boat are starting to be systematized, and also the fact that it's like army men. It gives them a bit of it's not just a group of like, you know, people gossiping about memories. I mean, I imagine that it's kind of war memories or what's important. And then with the Uranus playing chess in Sagittarius 3, it's kind of taking that further, even just about strategy and how are we going to win, not rest on the laurels of the past or whatever. And so that all resonates for me, I think.
Are you a very strategic man, would you say, Guy?
Yes, my nature is, and I'm learning to actually, you know, do better at it. Strategy often gets people in trouble. It certainly has gotten me in trouble. So it's like you have to get good at it if you're going to do it.
Well, that's a kind of profound image. Uranus in the chess player image, it suggests genius, doesn't it? Do you have the inclination to be that strategic that you can outthink others?
Yeah, it's risky when you try to, you know, mess with nature, but sometimes there's no choice.
Yeah, and risk is just part of the game, isn't it? You know.
My ascendant that I worked on was is Cancer 4 degrees, and it's a cat arguing with a mouse, which is great, I guess. First of all, you're thinking, why does the cat doesn't argue with a mouse? The cat is the hunter and the mouse is the prey. And reading about it, it kind of went on to how we are both animals and angels at the same time, and we suppress our animal instinct based on, we deny our instincts because we have been persuaded. It's more social. The hunter kills to survive. It's natural. Society provides cat food to soften the killer, which is something interesting about the symbol, was that James said on the site that it's you can break the rules if it's for a kind of spiritual purpose. In a sense, you know, like we need rule breakers really to make changes, and sometimes we have a spiritual obligation to break the rules. Otherwise, we're all just kind of sheep. I hate using that term, but you get what I'm trying to say. So.
But do you break the rules very often?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like.
Are you in the hunter position? Usually.
No, I wouldn't say so. I say a lot of the time spent in my head is the cat arguing with the mouse. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. But there are times when, yeah, you have to take a stand. Take a stand. Without getting political or anything. There are times when you think to yourself, hang on a minute, there's something in my gut that says no to this situation, so I'm not going to do it.
So my ascendant is Sagittarius 19, pelicans moving their habitat. And it's not an image that spoke to me strongly or firmly or directly or clearly to begin with. It's Sagittarius is fiery and mutable, and I am very enthusiastic and I love change. So those two things marry up for me. One of the things I said to Josh and Guy was in Ruby Formiski's imagery, the pelicans are flying away, and I don't like the idea of flying away. But if I reverse that and think that if I'm flying towards something rather than away from something, that changes it. And the pelicans are talked about as if they're changing, they're moving their habitat because they're not happy where they are. There's something wrong with where they are. And I also talked about not being able to solve big problems of the world alone. You know, we all need to work together. As this links in with what Joshua was saying about needing each other to solve problems.
There's another aspect, Richard, if I might interrupt. I think this image is mainly to do with being willing to make an inconvenient change on behalf of someone else, particularly your children. But it's a lovely image. It's not an image of defeat.
I don't know enough about the natural history of pelicans, James, to kind of understand it. Maybe that's something I should be researching.
Well, the thing is that they're looking after their offspring, and they move where it's comfortable for them on behalf of their offspring. It's an act of self-sacrifice.
Yeah,
it's a lovely image of compassion in the animal kingdom.
And interestingly, I have Saturn conjunct my ascendant within 5 degrees, and Venus conjunct it within 7 degrees. And so there is an aspect of doing the responsible thing. That's the Saturn, kind of irrespective of the cost to me. But doing that enthusiastically and also embracing the change associated with that. But in my first 6 houses, the whole of the southern hemisphere of my natal chart, there is only one planet, and that's Chiron in the 2nd house. The rest of it is completely empty, apart from the south node.
Astrologers talk of configurations, shapes of charts and so on. And some of them have gone to a lot of trouble to make real meaning out of this. I haven't gone into that. The description of a chart which has all the planets in one half except for one is often called a bucket. And all of your planets are above the horizon, which suggests consciousness, extroversion, but Chiron below the horizon, in introverted self-analysis. In the 2nd house, values, you know, somebody who's going out into the world, finding out what's going on in order to turn within and find out what's important and meaningful. Yeah, that's kind of, that works for you, doesn't it? Quite reasonably well.
I have Leo 4, which is a man formally dressed, and a deer with its horns folded. And as the descendant, I have a Hindu healer. So what's really interesting, the first thing that came to my mind, I did some performance art in my 20s, and so I was very dressed up, but if you would strip off the jewelry and all of that, I was basically wearing a yoga outfit, which is the Hindu healer and one of my professions now. What really resonated was the James Wright over 5 degrees, always like a title, and this one is self-confidence. And I have had quite a struggle with that. I didn't have a lot of self at a certain point, to the point that I changed my name into Heidi Wang, because Wang is a name that is the most used in the world, and I wanted to be nobody. And self-confidence is actually my favorite word in Sanskrit, is Srada. I have it tattooed here, and it means both self-confidence and faith. So there we are again with faith, and trusting God, because God himself is the same. So I do resonate with this ascendant in the idea of that there's something about celebrating small accomplishments that comes into this symbol, and this idea of like, yeah, we're already disguised, we're already wearing our skin, and to in a way, the Hindu healer, I feel like I quite integrated that one into the costume party of the Ascendant Leo. and yeah, the search for self, and how much of ourselves do we have to prove to feel like a person.
Mine is Virgo 4, black child playing with white children. I am quite open to people with different backgrounds or coming from different places than mine. So I do resonate with this black child playing with white children. I think it suits me.
My mother told me my time of birth was 110, which gives me Capricorn 11 as my ascendant. And it's just nothing to me. It's boring, meaningless. And there was a point at which I decided to rectify my chart and make my ascendant meaningful. And I moved it 1 degree forward, which would be 111 in the morning, not 110. So that seemed permissible. A Virgo mother telling me I was born at 110 instead of 111 is a little bit suspect, but who knows? So I'm happy with the Capricorn 12 image, but most particularly I'm happy with the Cancer 12 image, which Rudyard describes as a Tibetan woman holding a baby with a message. And the idea here is that she's identifying the future Dalai Lama. And in one-to-one relationships, which is my normal way of being in my occupation, I'm a counselor. So I have a very large number of intense one-to-one connections, and I have done for a very long period of time. So my appetite for intense one-to-one relationship is lived out more professionally than socially. I haven't been very good at one-to-one relationships on the level of love, but on the level of counseling, I usually find a way to recognize the potential of my client, see in them something that they have not seen in themselves, and speak to that and recognize that such that they recognize it too. So my descendant, which is that degree, is then understood. My Capricorn ascendant at 12 degrees Capricorn is the student of nature lecturing. So this is somebody who's worked out how it all works and tells other people. And I am quite good at managing my life. I was born into a family of managers. We all kind of went our own way and did our own thing and never really related to each other at all. But it turned out that each of the 5 of us in our family actually were excellent managers in our different ways. And so when I eventually came across people, when I grew up and I came across people who didn't know how to work things out and they had debts and didn't do what they said they were going to do and made mistakes and couldn't get a job and things like that, it's just like, I just didn't understand it. It was so obvious to me that life required management and you had to do this or suffer the consequences. And the idea of suffering the consequences was just, we don't do that in our family. You know, we get things right. So I was brought up not to know about getting things wrong. I was that trained as a manager. And eventually I come to realize that other people didn't know what I knew about management. So I started to kind of give some instruction in that. So it fits my life track and my personality quite well that I'm a teacher of management techniques, which I think is the interpretation I give to this sign. My rising planet is Jupiter. And it became bizarre to me at some point to realize that quite a lot of people saw me as jolly, jovial, and it just isn't a word I describe myself with, but humor is really important to me, and I get myself into trouble quite often by telling jokes that are inappropriate, you know, in a very Aries like Jupiter way. I can insult people and think that they might find it funny. So there is a part of me which is entirely, as insensitive as you would hope an Aries person might be. I can do that quite well. All in the name of education. Thank you.